It was an ordinary night, like any other that I spend giving pizzas here in the city. I work as a delivery man for 2 years, so I've seen a little of everything, but nothing like what happened that day. It was around 10 p.m., a Thursday, and the application sent an order to a quiet village, one with old houses and narrow streets that looked deserted after 8 p.m. The address was a house at the end of the street, number 47, a place I had never gone before. I arrived there with the warm pizza, the light of the balcony flashing half-weak, and knocked on the door. The wind was cold, and I felt a shiver, but I thought it was just the cold. While waiting, I noticed that the street was too silent, like not a dog barking. That's when the door opened, and an elderly gentleman, with messy white hair and a sleepy face, appeared. He looked at me confused, as if I had hit the wrong house. The old man said, with his voice a little hoarse, that he had not asked for any pizza. I was not understood because the application was right. Name, address, everything beaten. I began to explain that the request was in the system. I showed him the cell phone, but he just shook his head, saying that he lived alone and that no one had made a request there. As I spoke, I took a look over his shoulder, just out of curiosity. You know, the room was dark, with a weak light coming from a lamp in the corner. And that's when I saw it. In a dark corner, near a curtain, there was a face. A young, pale face with wide eyes, half hidden in the shadows. He was looking at me fixed, and suddenly made a sign with his hand, like SHH, asking for silence. My heart fired on the spot, and I felt a cold in my pimple that I don't explain. The old man didn't even realize that I was looking inside, but I couldn't take my eyes out of that face. I tried to disguise the fright, but my heart was hitting so hard that it seemed that the old man was going to hear. I forced myself to look at him again, pretending to be all normal, while my head spun trying to understand what I had just seen. Who was that guy in the corner? Why was he hidden? And more importantly, why did he make that signal for me to be quiet? The old man was still talking, a little annoyed, saying that I better check the right address, but I could barely pay attention. My desire was to ask, "Who's in there?" But something in the look of that young face crashed me. It was as if he had warned me of a danger I didn't understand. Then the old man started closing the door, muttering that he did not want the pizza, and I stayed there, still with the box in his hand, feeling a weird weight on his chest, as if something very wrong was happening. When the door knocked, I was still planted on the porch, looking at the chipped wood as if she would give me some answer. The silence of the street seemed even heavier now, and I swear I felt like someone was still watching me. I looked at the house windows, but the curtains were closed, and the lamp light barely crossed the blurry glass. I thought of playing the doorbell again, maybe to confirm if there was really someone inside, but my instinct shouted for me to get out of it as soon as possible. I took a step back, and that's when I heard a low noise, like a drag of furniture from inside the house. It was not tall, but enough to make my stomach wrap. I looked at the cell phone, thinking of calling the order number, but the application only showed unavailable number. My hand trembled as I kept my cell phone, and I started walking fast to the car, looking back every 2 steps, afraid to see that face again. I arrived in the car with my heart in my mouth, still holding the pizza box that no one wanted. Before I got in, I took one last look home, and I swear I saw the curtain from the front window to move, like someone pulling just a little to look out. I couldn't see who it was, but I felt a shiver so strong that I almost let the pizza fall. I got in the car fast, locked the doors and connected the engine, but my hands were sweating so much that I could barely hold the steering wheel. While driving to leave the village, I kept thinking about that young face in the dark corner. He seemed desperate, as if he wanted to tell me something. But what? My head was imagining 1,000 things. Was the old man lying? Was anyone stuck in there? I stopped the car at a gas station about 2 blocks away, just to try to calm down, but the fear wouldn't leave. While I was at the post, I decided to check the app again to see if I had any tracks on the order. The stranger is that the request was gone from the history, as if it had never existed. It never happened before. I tried to connect to the pizzeria support, but the call was falling all the time, as if the signal was bad just for me. I felt a cold in my belly, because it seemed that everything was conspiring to leave me in the dark. I looked at the clock. I was going to 10:30 p.m., and I still had other deliveries to do, but I couldn't get that house out of my head. I decided to send a message to my boss, telling what happened, but he only answered, "Cut there. It must be Trot." Trot? It didn't look like a Trot. That face, that sign of silence. There was something very wrong. I decided I wasn't going back to that village, but at the same time, a part of me wanted to know what was happening there. I sat in the car, trying to convince myself with the deliveries, but my head didn't leave that house. That guy's face in the dark corner was engraved in my mind, as if he had marked me in some way. I decided to give Google a quick search by the address, just to see if I thought something, like news or anything strange. I didn't find anything specific, just an old article about the village being in quiet, ideal for families place. Quiet? It was more scary. As I looked at the cell phone, I realized that the car radio started to squeak, even though it was turned off. It was a low, static sound, but with some murmurs that I couldn't understand. I turned off the radio tightly, as if it were to solve, but the silence that came later was worse. My heart was accelerated again, and I began to feel weird pressure, as if someone was watching me there in the middle of the empty post. I decided I needed to do something, even if it was just to get that weight off my chest. I thought of going back to the old man's house, but just imagining knocking on that door again, my stomach turned. Instead, I decided to go through the village again, just to take a look from afar without getting out of the car. While driving, the street seemed even darker, as if the lights of the posts were weaker. When I arrived close to house number 47, I saw that the balcony light was off now, and the house seemed completely in the dark. I stopped the car about meters away with the engine on, just watching. That's when I noticed a movement in the side window, as if someone had passed fast behind the curtain. My blood froze. He was not the old man because the silhouette was lower, thinner, just like the guy I saw before. My hand went to the cell phone to take a picture, but the battery died out of nowhere, even being 60% before. I stood in the car, looking home, with my heart hitting so hard that it seemed to explode. My dead cell phone in hand only worsened the feeling of being completely isolated. I tried to turn it on, but nothing, the black screen. The worst was that silence on the street, broken only by the sound of the car engine. I decided I wasn't going to stay there more time, so I engaged the march to leave, but before accelerating, I heard a noise. It was a low sound, like a light beating, coming from the direction of the house. It looked like someone hitting the window, but I couldn't see anything with the darkness. My head screamed for me to leave, but a part of me wanted to understand what was happening. Was that young guy asking for help, or was it a trap? My hand trembled on the wheel, and I felt a cold sweat run down the back of the neck while trying to decide what to do. Speed slowly, I started to walk away, but couldn't stop looking at the rearview mirror. The house seemed to swallow the low light in the street, like a black hole. When I was almost around the corner, I saw something that made me brake suddenly. A shadow came out of the side of the house, fast, as if running to backyard. I couldn't see if he was the old man, the young guy, or someone else, but he was human, for sure. My stomach rapped, and I felt a fear I had never felt before, like an instinct that I said I was in danger. I thought about calling the police, but what was I going to say? I saw a strange face in a house, without proof, no cell phone working. I knew it wasn't going to go to anything. I decided to leave once and for all, but while driving, I realized that my breath was short, as if the air in the car was heavier. I looked at the rearview mirror again and swear that for a second I thought I saw a figure in the back seat. I turned my neck so fast that I almost felt a cramp, but the back seat was empty. Only the pizza box thrown there with the lid half open, as if it had been moved. My heart was fired, and I swear I felt a shiver up the spine, as if something had passed through me. I turned on the inner light of the car to be sure, but there was nothing, just my paranoia screaming. I tried to convince myself that it was just the fright, that my head was preaching pieces, but the fear didn't let go. While driving away from that village, I began to notice that the radio, which was already turned off, made that low squeaking again. This time, I heard something that looked like a voice, but so stuffy that I couldn't understand. I stopped the car at the highway entrance, my hands shaking, and turned off everything to the engine. The silence that came was worse, because now I could hear my own breath, tall and unzipped, as if I had run a marathon. I stood there for a few minutes trying to calm down, but the weight in the chest only increased. I looked at the cell phone again, and out of nowhere he called alone, with the screen flashing as if he had restarted. When it came back, the pizzeria app was open, but now showed a new order, for the same address, House 47, same village. My blood froze. There was no way. I had not accepted anything new, and the previous request was gone. The customer's name was just a lot of random letters, like a system error. I thought to ignore it, but something told me that this was not just a bug. I called my boss again, but the call fell before I even touched. I tried to send a message, but the phone crashed when sending it. I felt a cold in my belly, as if something was pulling me back to that home, even though it was miles away. I decided I wasn't going back at all, but the fear that something or someone knew I saw that face wouldn't leave my head. I decided to drive straight to pizzeria without stopping, without looking back. The cell phone was on the passenger seat, still with the screen fought in that weird request. I didn't even want to touch him, as if the device had become part of that nightmare. While driving, I started to smell strange in the car, like a damp, half mold that wasn't there before. I looked at the pizza box on the back seat, thinking that maybe it was her, but it made no sense. It was a new pizza from Pepperoni, had no way to be stinking like that. I stopped a traffic light and, for a second, I thought I heard a whisper, well low, coming from behind. It wasn't the radio because it was turned off. My whole body crashed, and I didn't have the courage to look at the rearview mirror. When the signal opened, I accelerated as if my life depended on it, just wanting to reach the pizzeria and forget that night. But deep down, I knew it wasn't going to be that easy. I arrived at the pizzeria almost at 11 p.m., sweaty, with short breathing. I entered, threw the pizza box at the counter and told my boss what happened, not to mention my face in the dark corner, because it looked too crazy. He just laughed, said it was a trot again and sent me to relax. But when we opened the box to throw the pizza out, it was empty. There was no pizza, just a damp spot in the background, as if something had drained there. My boss was confused, but I felt a cold that paralyzed me. I left the pizzeria, went home and locked the door, still with that moldy smell in my memory. To this day, I don't know who that guy was in the house, nor why he made a sign of silence. The order never appeared in the app, and I never came back in that village. Sometimes I feel him watching me, as if I knew I saw something I shouldn't. And the worst, I have no explanation, and I think I will never have. Look, I swear I never had something so strange in my life, and look that I already made delivery in every weird corner of this city. It was an ordinary night, around 10 p.m., any Thursday, and I was stopped in front of a building in the center waiting for the customer to get the pizza. The street was a little deserted, only the noise of cars passing in the distance and the cold wind that made my jacket swing. I was leaning against the bike, looking at the cell phone when I noticed flashes of light from a building across the street. It was a camera flash, very strong, coming from a window on the third floor, as if someone had taken pictures. At first, I thought it was just impression, perhaps a reflection of some car, but the flashes remained rhythmic, like every 2 seconds. I looked straight to the window and felt a cold in my pimple. You couldn't see anyone, just the half-open curtain and that light flashing nonstop. I was a little uncomfortable, but I thought, okay, It must be someone testing a camera or whatever. But then the flashes started to get faster, as if the person had realized that I was looking. I'm kind of paranoid, I confess, so I started to imagine a lot of things. Was it someone watching me? But why? I'm just a delivery man. I have nothing interesting for someone to take a picture. I tried to convince myself that it was bullshit, but my heart was fired. Then, out of nowhere, the intercom touched and I almost jumped off. The client said he was going down, but as I waited, those flashes would not stop. I looked again to the window and I swear, for a second, I thought I saw a silhouette move behind the curtain. It was not a clear form, but it was something strange, kind of crooked, as if it weren't exactly a person. My hand even trembled holding the pizza thermal bag. I tried to focus on the client that was going down, but those flashes kept hammering in my head. I was looking at the cell phone, pretending everything was normal, but my eye kept going back to the window. What's worse is that now the flashes were more intense, like a stroboscopic light, and I started to feel weird pressure, as if someone had stared at me. Do you know when you feel a look even without seeing anyone? That's it, only 1,000 times worse. The customer finally appeared, a kind of hasty guy, took the pizza and didn't even look at me. As he climbed back, I stayed there, still trying to decide whether to look at the window again or running out. I decided to take one last look, and man, I regret so much. The curtain was more open now, and the silhouette I had seen before seemed clearer, but wrong. It was tall, too thin, with arms that looked too long to the body. I couldn't see a face, just that outline against the flashing light. I climbed the motorcycle fast, wanting to give it out, but before turning on the engine, I realized that the flashes suddenly stopped. Total silence. The window was dark now, as if nothing had happened. This somehow made me even more terrified. It was as if whoever they were to realize that I was leaving and decided to turn off everything. My heart was in my mouth, and my hands sweated so much that I almost dropped my cell phone. I turned on the bike, but before accelerating, I looked back one last time. The curtain was swinging, as if someone had just moved her. There was no wind strong enough to do that, and I know that because the street was too calm. I got the feeling that something was watching me, waiting for me to make some wrong movement. I accelerated and left as fast as I got, but I swear I felt a shiver on the back of the neck, as if something had followed my way. While I was driving around the city, trying to convince myself that it was just my head preaching, I couldn't stop looking at the rearview mirror. Every time I thought I was going to see something behind me, like a shadow or whatever, the street was empty, but I felt electricity in the air, as if something was wrong. I arrived at the restaurant to get another delivery, but it was so nervous that the manager even asked if I was fine. I just shook my head and said it was good, but inside it was chaos. I decided to take a walk before taking the next order, just to try to calm me down. But, man, every time I stopped in a headlight, I looked at buildings around, afraid to see those flashes again. I saw nothing, but the feeling of being observed would not come out of me. It was as if something has been stuck to me since that moment in front of the building. I went back to the restaurant and took another order, but the address, my stomach froze when I read. It was for the same building as before. I almost refused, I swear, but I needed the money, and the manager was already eyeing me because of my panic face. I went, with my heart in my hand, thinking that maybe it was just coincidence. When I got there, I parked the motorcycle in the same place as before and looked straight to the third-floor window. Nothing. The curtain was closed, with no sign of light. But that did not calm me. On the contrary, it seemed that the silence was worse. I was waiting for the client, with the thermal bag in his hand, and every noise on the street, a car passing, a leaf dragging, made my whole body tremble. I was feeling like a cornered animal, waiting for something to jump over me to any second. As I was there, standing, waiting for the customer to go down, I started to hear a low tinnitus, like a sound of static electricity. At first, I thought it was the motorcycle or some pole nearby, but the sound seemed to come from above, from the front building. I looked at the window again, and man, my blood froze. The curtain was ajar, just a crack, and I swear I saw a movement inside, as if something had passed fast. It wasn't a person, at least it didn't seem. It was too fast, almost like a blur. My first impulse was to drop everything and run, but my legs were locked. The tinnitus got stronger, and now I felt him in the chest, as if I was vibrating inside me. I tried to call the client through the intercom again, but no one answered. I stared at the building, with that horrible feeling that if I turned my back, something would happen. That's when I noticed that the street was completely silent. No cars, no wind, nothing. Just that tinnitus and me. I decided I wasn't going to wait any longer. I threw the thermal bag on the bike and was almost riding when I saw a flash again. Only this time it was not in the third-floor window. It was downstairs in a glass door that gave Pro Hall from the front building. The light flashed twice, and I saw that silhouette again, stopped behind the glass. It was tall, thin, with arms that seemed to drag to the floor. There was no face, or at least I couldn't see it, but I felt that she was looking straight at me. My whole body tingled, and I started to sweat cold. I tried to turn on the motorcycle, but my hands trembled so much that the key fell to the floor. As I bent down to catch, the flash stopped, and when I looked again, the door was empty. But the tinnitus continued, now so high that it seemed my head was going to explode. Finally, I managed to turn on the motorcycle and left flying, without even looking back. I drove as fast as I got, my heart beating so hard that it seemed like I was going out my mouth. I didn't look at the rearview mirror this time, afraid of what I could see. The tinnitus was still in my head, even with the noise of the motorcycle and the wind. I went straight to the restaurant, but when I arrived, I couldn't even explain to the manager why I was so terrified. I just said I wouldn't go back to that building never again. He looked at me strange, but didn't ask much. I grabbed a glass of water and sat in a corner, trying to calm down. My head was 1,000, and I was reviewing everything in my mind. The flashes, the silhouette, the tinnitus. I tried to convince myself that it was just stress, that maybe I had imagined things, but deep down I knew it wasn't that. That feeling of being observed was still with me, as if something had marked me. Even my cell phone looked heavy in my hand, as if I was afraid to look at him and see something I shouldn't. I decided to finish the office earlier and go home. On the way, every dark corner, every building with erased windows gave me goosebumps. I arrived at my apartment and locked the door, something I never do so carefully. I sat on the couch, still with the jacket, and stared at the ceiling, trying to understand what had happened. The worst was when I realized that my cell phone was with the gallery open and had a new photo that I didn't remember taking. It was dark, granulated, but you could see the outline of a building, and there, in the third-floor window, a weak light shone. My stomach rolled. I didn't take this picture, man, I swear I didn't take it. I deleted her on the spot, with tremendous hands, and threw my cell phone in the corner of the couch. I was awake all night, afraid of closing my eyes and remembering that silhouette. To this day, I don't know what that was, but I never went through that street again. That night, I could barely sleep, but the little I fell asleep was full of nightmares. I dreamed of that silhouette in the window, only now it was closer, as if it had left the building and were on my door. I woke up sweating, my heart fired, and the first thing I did was check the phone again. There was no strange picture anymore, but I still felt him different, as if someone had messed with him. I went to work the next day, but I warned the manager that I no longer wanted deliveries in that area. He grunted, said I was exaggerating, but ended up accepting. But the rest of the day I couldn't concentrate. Each motorcycle that passed, every light flashing on a pole, reminded me of the flashes. I kept looking at buildings around, afraid to see that curtain swinging again. It was as if that thing had left a mark on me, a paranoia that didn't explain. The most bizarre thing is that when I told my friend Kaio, who also delivers, he said he has heard stories from other deliverers about that building. Nothing very clear, just rumors of strange lights and people who felt weird things there. He laughed, said it was urban legend, but I didn't find it funny. What I saw was not imagination, man. That silhouette, the tinnitus, the photo on the cell phone, everything seemed too real. To this day, I avoid going through any street that has tall buildings with dark windows. Sometimes, when I'm alone at home, I feel a shiver from nowhere, as if something was still looking at me. What's worse is that anything has never happened after that. The flashes, the silhouette, the tinnitus, everything stopped that night, as if it had started out of nowhere and missing the same way. I have no explanation, and I think I will never have. I have been working as an application delivery man for almost 2 years, and at that time I've seen everything. Rude people, bizarre situations, even robberies in dangerous areas. But what happened that Tuesday night was unlike anything. It was around 9 p.m. when I went to deliver a dinner in one of those chic condominiums, in a street full of mansions here in the South Zone. The delivery was quiet. The girl came to the gate, thanked politely, and entered. I stayed there just another minute, answering a message from the app before I got back to the car. That's when I realized that something was wrong. The driver's door was a little ajar. I was surprised because I always lock the car in the alarm. When I opened it, I took a shock. The glove door was turned, and my wallet was gone, with all the documents, cards, and even some money I had received in kind earlier. At the time, my heart fired, but it wasn't just for the wallet. My cell phone, which I had left in the support, rested on the panel because I use it for GPS and the orders. I was there but turned off. I thought I had unloaded, which was strange, because he was over 60% when I left the restaurant. I turned on the car, and in the same second, the phone called alone. The screen lit and started popping messages, one after another, all of an unknown number. I opened WhatsApp, and the first message made me freeze. You should pay more attention to what you leave in the car. Then came another. Now you will understand what is true fear. And one more. It's no use running. Dude, at that time I stopped breathing for a few seconds. It was as if someone had observed me there all the time. I stood there, in the car, my hands sweating on the wheel and the cell phone shaking the other. I looked around, waiting to see someone watching me, but the street was completely empty. No car passing, no dogs barking, nothing. Only the lights of the posts and that suffocating feeling that there was something very wrong. My instinct was to call someone, for anyone, but before I did it, another message came. Don't call anyone. I'm closer than you might think. Man, that crashed me. I looked straight to the rearview mirror and then to the side mirrors. Nothing. But even so, I swear to God, I felt like someone was looking at me from a corner, maybe even from one of those dark houses. I decided to start the car and get out of there as soon as possible. When I entered the main avenue, I started trying to understand how it had happened. I had locked the car, I'm sure. And the cell phone? How could anyone move him? I was trying to rationalize, but the messages continued, one after another, some saying things no one would know anymore. Like, did you like the delivery at number 1743? You were very friendly, right? It was the number of the house where I had just delivered. Another said, you should have seen me when you passed the rearview mirror. Man, that destroyed me. I wanted to vomit nervously. What's worse is that the person's voice seemed to be in my head, as if he knew exactly what I was feeling every second. I tried to stay calm and went straight to a gas station that I always get when I want to breathe a little between one delivery and another. It is well lit, has camera, and there are always people around. I parked there near the air pump and stayed in the car, trying to understand if it could be any kind of trot. But even with all the possibilities going through my head, I explained nothing how someone knew such specific details. When I thought of blocking the number, another message arrived. Blocks, and the next message will be for your mother. I froze. My mother's name appeared there, written right. She doesn't even live in the city. lives in the countryside. And the worst, the next message came with a picture of her, taken from her gate. It was recent. The sky was still clear in the image. They were there today. My vision began to blur with despair. Couldn't reason. I ran into the convenience store. I asked to use the landline and called my mother. She answered good with a calm voice, asking why I was calling out of nowhere. I asked if everything was fine, if someone strange had passed in front of the house. Anything. She said no, that the day was normal. But even so, I asked her to lock everything and not open to anyone. I went back to the car tremendous, as if the floor was collapsing. One more message arrived. You should stop running. This is all just because you didn't learn to pay attention. I started to wonder if anyone was following me, if I had any hidden camera in the car. I even looked under the bank, in the trunk, in everything. Nothing. I no longer knew what to do. I thought of going to the police station, but I was afraid of being followed and ending up putting someone else at risk. I didn't know who I was dealing with. Everything seemed calculated, as if they had planned every step. While I was stopping at the post, another message arrived. You won't make any further delivery today. And soon after, the delivery app simply crashed. When I tried to restart, an error message appeared. Account suspended by unusual activity. That knocked me down. It was my only means of work. I felt as if I was slowly erased, as if someone were wanting to tear every part of my routine, my safety, just to see me desperate. At this point, I no longer had the courage to turn on the car. I stayed there, looking fixed to the phone screen, waiting for the next message, as if I had accepted that I had no more control. But then everything stopped. Suddenly, no new message. The number disappeared from the conversation, as if it had never existed. The cell phone stopped locking, the app has been working again, and all the messages received disappeared. They really disappeared, as if they had been erased straight from the system. I stayed there for another 20 minutes, waiting for something to happen, but nothing. I turned on the car and left, as if it had left a nightmare that no one else saw. I got home and locked everything. I never received any message from that number again. I could never track anything. To this day, I have no idea who did that or why. In the following days, I tried to follow life normally, but any notification on my cell phone made me jump. I started leaving the phone in airplane mode when I was not working and avoided delivering in that region for a long time. But even so, the feeling of being observed did not pass. I was looking over my shoulder all the time, and the worst thing was that I had nowhere to run, because I had no idea who the person was behind those messages. I talked to a friend that digital security manager showed what happened, but he said that without the messages, without the number, and without any concrete proof, it was as if nothing had happened. And then that despair beats. You know you lived a bizarre thing, but no one can prove anything. And deep down, you begin to doubt your own sanity. I still think about it almost every day. How it all happened fast, as if they had pushed a button to panic me and then simply turned off everything. I never left the phone visible in the car. I never left the door open even by carelessness. And the strangest, my wallet appeared a week later inside the delivery backpack, in a compartment that I hardly use. The money was missing, of course, but the documents were all there, intact, as if someone wanted to return just to remind me that they can still move with me when they want. I tell you here because I know there are more people who have lived things that nobody believes. And perhaps writing here is the only way not to feel completely crazy. I just wanted to understand, why with me? Why that way? And why did you stop so suddenly? I never received any message again. But the fear, this one didn't leave.